Dang, hey, hold up. Look, I was about to start my intro. You're probably like, what's going on? Why is it frozen? Look, I paused it right here. This was my intro. Look at the resemblance between your boy and Robert Saleh over here. Come on now. You don't see it? I mean, look at us, okay? Look at his mouth. Look. I'm just saying, y'all call me Patrick Mahomes. Maybe you should start calling me Robert Saleh. Maybe I should shave my head. I got the beard coming in, though. Oh, no, I got it. Okay, let's get to the video.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be starting off a brand new series. This is the first episode of Finding a Head Coach. And today's spotlight is Robert Saleh. So let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know DoseOfDion. He put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here, and I'm excited for this. You know why I'm excited? Because we're starting a new series, just like the general manager one. We will continue to do that one, but I thought we might as well start mixing in some head coaches. That way, when we talk about general managers and guys that they could hire, we know some of these candidates as we go through. Look, there's a lot of names out there, but we got a lot of time, okay? So we're going to be flying through these candidates. Comment down below who we should talk about next, and also let me know what you think about this candidate, okay? My goal of these videos is just to inform you, okay? Tell you everything you need to know, maybe the pros and cons of the head coaching candidates, and give some of my take on whether or not I may hire this guy if I were the Detroit Lions. Now, this may be a little bit more difficult because, you know, you usually hire the general manager and he'll go hire his head coach. Also, this is assuming that Daryl Bevel doesn't earn the job. Okay, but you never know. I mean, he's got 5 weeks to prove it. These guys are going to have interviews and things like that after the season. So let's dive right into it. Let's talk about Robert Saleh, who is right now the favorite to get the job. Okay, that's what I've seen. Betting odds, he's the favorite to get the job. Okay, so we might as well start with him. Look, we can talk about numbers. We'll talk about pros and cons. We can talk about that all day. But let me just say this point. And this is the point that's going to be very difficult to judge until the guy comes in. But this is what I think a team needs to have a good head coach. This is what I personally think makes a good head coach. Okay, I've played sports before. Obviously, I haven't played in the NFL, but I think what makes a good head coach is the guy that really bonds well with his players. That doesn't necessarily mean I need you on the sideline being super loud, being super, yelling and all that kind of stuff when things go well, or yelling and screaming at players when things go bad. That's not necessarily what I need. Some players, that's fine. Other players don't react to that well. I don't need a guy that's super loud, right? Jim Caldwell was the most stonewall guy, right? And he didn't move at all. But the Lions won game with him, right? And everybody tells me they brought energy with him. Okay, but was he on the sideline doing all this crazy stuff? No, he was just kind of standing there still. Then you get other guys that are louder. They're out there. They're making loud things like Jim Schwartz. Did it necessarily equal winning all the time? No, it didn't always equal winning. So I think for what makes a good head coach is not necessarily how loud you are, if you're quiet or not. Like, that doesn't matter to me. I think what makes a good head coach, especially when you're first starting off, is having a head coach that's willing and he's able to connect with each player in their own individual way. See, what's going on with New England right now, I think, is now they have certain guys that they get, and they have that built to where they don't need everybody, right? He's not stepping in, he's not trying to figure it out. He's at that position where I only need to get certain guys, and if these guys don't respond to how I like to coach, then they don't need to be here. And I think Patricia came in with that mindset to do that to Detroit in some ways. And unfortunately, there was a lot of players that maybe didn't buy into that. Some may have, some may not have. And that's a problem when it's split. You can't really have it split. And we saw it with some big name players. But I think what also happens is you need that coach that can adjust based on those players to talk to. I need a coach that if a player wants to get yelled at and screamed at and motivates you, that's what he needs to do. But I also need a coach that if a guy doesn't respond to that, if he doesn't respond to, hey, you're yelling at me, you're screaming at me, you don't want to make mistakes, so I'm cautious, I'm playing, scared with it. You can't have that. That's how sports go. You got to be able to play loose, have fun with it. Right? And some players want to get yelled at. They want to be put in line. This is what you do, or this is your punishment. So they go do it. Other players, they don't want that, right? So there needs to be a mix there. And I don't know how to judge that on a head coach, but I think personally that is the most important thing that you're going to have to find. For first guy stepping in, he's coming into a new locker room. There are all these new guys that he's never met before. He needs to be able to adjust to who he's talking to. And if Robert Saleh can bring that, I believe he will be successful. I think if any coach can bring that, I believe they'll be successful in some ways. Because I know he's smart. It's a lot to it, but I think that's one of the biggest things is how you are as a person, how you treat each person on that team. You can be the smartest guy, but if people aren't going to go out there and fight for you, I don't care what you're doing on the sideline. Are people going to go fight for you, right? Do they want to play for you? That's the biggest thing. Do I want to play for you, right? Do I want to go out there and play my butt off for you? That doesn't mean you yell at me so I do it. That means you encourage me maybe, or if the player wants to yell at, it means you scream at that player and you put them in line, but everybody's different. And you have to be able to adjust to those personalities, because if not, it's going to be very difficult. And unless you have something built there where it's already established and you can just look for your certain players because you don't have all these holes to fill, then it's going to be very, very tough to implement that to new guys. Urban Meyer said this really well. I mean, like when he was talking about under the hood, I mean, you point to me an NFL team that has no talent, okay? You point to me an NFL player that's not a talented player, that's not an athlete, okay? You show me one of those guys. Show me one. Everybody in the NFL has all these ability stuff. Yes, there is different levels of talent. There is absolutely no question about it. But can you get the most out of that guy? All right, because that to me is what is important. So we'll talk about the scheme. We'll talk about the pros. We'll talk about the numbers. But I wanted to throw this out there. And I wanted to put this in the video to just let you guys know that I think that is the most important quality. And maybe Patricia didn't have that. Maybe Bevel will have that. But I think when you take over an organization, that's what you need. And I think that's where you see these head coaches that have been really successful everywhere. I have a feeling that that's why that happened. A head coach that can step in and have success right away is because you could say whatever you want from the outside. You can say, well, here's how he is from the outside. He's terrible. Say whatever you want. But something's working there. And it wasn't just that magically everybody liked him. You have to get players to buy in and play for you. And that tells me that that coach was able to fit to what everybody needed, was able to adjust to the players, was able to respond, was able to react to that player and pull the best out of him. If you can't pull the best out of your player, pulling the best out of your player doesn't mean, yeah, we're going to run sprints until you're better. Pulling the best out of your player is knowing who that guy is. It's knowing who you are. And I know what it takes to make you great. Whether that means trying to lift you up, or then that means putting you down so you want to shoot fire back at me and you want to go out there and play extremely well, whatever it may be, that's what you need to know about each individual player. You need to figure that out. You need to have that relationship. Okay, that's why people bring up, well, my way or the highway, and that didn't work. It's because all these guys here are mixed, right? We don't have a certain locker room like the Patriots do where it's like, okay, everybody thinks one way. We don't have that. We haven't established anything like that. It was starting to get there, but we don't have that. Okay, that's the certain guy that they want in New England. That's the certain guy. They do tests for that thing. So when you're stepping into a new team and you're trying to take over a team, which is Bevel's going to try to do, the team I think clicks right away and they're somewhat successful, I think it's going to be from that alone. Because you can be smart, you can be the best game plan, you can do all of that, but you can't run a team if you can't make everybody go out there and play their butts off for you because you are able to respond to them properly. Well, since we're talking about Robert Saleh in today's video, obviously we don't know what I just talked about, if he's going to be like that or not, but we did hear about the Richard Sherman thing. We know that, he supported him saying that he needs to get a job, he should be with the Detroit Lions, whatever, he needs to get a job somewhere, and he supported him saying he was a leader of men and he could rally a group of guys together. That's great. It sounds like everybody has bought in, and that's why that defense has found success. So that's awesome. Now, I want to hear that from more people. Obviously, hearing from Richard Sherman is great, but I also know that a guy in Robert Saleh worked with Pete Carroll, so I'm sure he has similar thoughts there, and I think that's why Richard Sherman, he was great with Seattle, and that's probably why he's responding so well with Robert Saleh. So that's great and all. I love to hear it from more people, but that's great to hear. But we heard that same thing with Detroit, right? We heard the guys that he brought in particular, a lot of those guys, you heard your drafted guys, or you heard the Duron Harmons, those guys, they always had his back because they like this style of coaching. But does everybody feel that way? Or does 95% of the people feel that way? At least a very big majority. That way you can go out there and win some games and everybody can buy them, because if that doesn't work, it doesn't matter. So I love what Richard Sherman said. It's great. It's going to be a really good point. But at the same time, how does everybody feel about it? That's the biggest question. And if he gets a job, we'll see. Okay, going through some background for Robert Saleh. He was born in Dearborn, Michigan. So he's from Michigan, and he did a lot of work in Michigan, I should say. He played college football in Michigan at Northern Michigan University. He was a tight end for 4 years, a 4-year starter. And he also got his degree in finance. Okay, that's interesting. So he knows about the money. I see you. Then he started coaching. After his football career, he went into coaching in 2002 with Michigan State, defensive assistant. Then he worked at Central Michigan, and then he worked at Georgia as an assistant. So he did some work in Michigan, so that makes people interested, right? He grew up a Barry Sanders fan, so it's like, okay, he'll understand the pain that we've went through. So this will be good because you're getting a guy that will implement his own kind of culture and his own system while also being from Detroit. I mean, people love that. They love the pairing of potentially a guy like Robert Saleh and Chris Spielman. I mean, that just sounds like a dream scenario to some people. So let's continue. In 2005, with the Texans, he joined as an intern head coach as an assistant. He was promoted to quality control and finally a linebacker assistant. In 2011, he was defensive quality control for the Seattle Seahawks with Pete Carroll. We know Pete Carroll is a very good coach. Then in 2014, fast forward a couple years, 2014, with the Jacksonville Jaguars, he got a job as a linebacker coach. And finally, in 2017, he got that job as a defensive coordinator with the San Francisco 49ers as they were really bad. So they needed some help, so they went out and gave Robert Saleh a chance, and I would say it's worked out pretty well for them. So you can see that, he's definitely worked his way up. He's coached at many different places, but he's a defensive specialist, okay? We're going to talk about guys like Eric Bieniemy and some other guys that, are known for their offense, kind of like Darrell Bevell, known for his offense. This guy is known for his defense. He's been through the ranks, and now here he is at the defensive coordinator, and he's looking for a shot to get a head coaching job. But this isn't the first time he's become available. I mean, last year, he was also a pretty popular name, but he ended up going back to San Francisco after the Browns passed on him for Kevin Stefanski. And actually, a lot of people poke fun at the Cleveland Browns for doing that from what I've seen at the time. Seems like the Browns made the right choice, though. Kevin Stefanski has them rolling, okay? They're 8-3, so you can't really hate on the move, man. The Browns are going places they haven't been in a long time. So shout out to the Cleveland Browns for making a good hire there. So let's talk about Robert Saleh a little bit. Now we know the background, okay, of who he is. Let's start with a couple of questions that I would ask Robert Saleh if I was interviewing him, kind of like the general manager questions. Now, these are pretty difficult to understand how he would answer these because he's been a coordinator, so he's not getting asked questions like this, right? He's not worried about the Lions. These are kind of questions that are difficult, but a couple of simple ones. First off, as a head coach, if he was hired as our head coach, since he's a defensive-minded coach, he would have to hire an offensive coordinator. Now, that's always the concern. It's kind of the same thing if you hire an offensive-minded head coach and he comes in. Even if he calls his own plays, you're still going to have to hire then a defensive coordinator because that's not your thing. So even if you come in and you're like Matt Patricia and you take the job and then he ultimately hires his defensive coordinator, you're still going to have to get that offensive mind because that's not something that you really know a lot about, okay? You win against it in practice, but it's still something that you're a little foreign to, and that will be the case with Robert Saleh for the offense side of the ball. So it'll be very vital that he can find a guy to fill in that offensive coordinator role. Because again, if this was a guy that was hired as our head coach, Darrell Bevell would not be here, okay? If Darrell Bevell's here, he'll be as our head coach. Darrell Bevell won't get back down to offense coordinator unless Robert Saleh comes in. He's like, wait, I like that guy. Bring him back. That probably won't happen. So it'll most likely be a new offense coordinator that he has to find. I would think that Robert Saleh might call the plays. I'm not sure how he would want to do that defensively, but offensively, he's going to have to find a coordinator. And the one guy that I've seen that's been linked to him a little bit. He was friends with Matt LaFleur, but now we know Matt LaFleur has a job with the Green Bay Packers, and, that's going pretty well. But one guy that I've seen mentioned with him is the guy that he might actually hire if he was hired as a head coach, and that is Mike McDaniel. Now, you probably have no idea who Mike McDaniel is. Personally, I had no idea who this dude was either. I read the name, and I was thinking Josh McDaniels. I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. Josh McDaniel? I'm like, wait, can we really hire Josh McDaniels as our offense coordinator? I mean, maybe if you really want out New England. But no, it's Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel, he's the run game coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. So it makes sense. Okay, wait, hold up. This guy's working for San Francisco. He's the run game coordinator. They work, they're working on the same team. So it makes sense. And also, since he's only the run game coordinator, you could see him try to take him from that staff and bring him over. So that'd be a name to keep an eye on. And again, Mike McDaniel would be very important because if you don't hit on that offensive coordinator and you're a defensive-minded coach, you're going to be in trouble because, well, will you be able to put up points? Do you have any idea how to run an offense? You're going to be very reliant on whoever you hire as that offensive coordinator to be able to do that job. So that's always a concern. That's always a concern, especially Robert Saleh, who's going to be a new-time head coach if he was hired here, is that, hey, he's never hired a guy before. Can he hire a guy? Does he know what he's looking for? Does he know what he really wants? This isn't the guy that necessarily he will hire, but it's just a name that I've seen connected with him. Question I would have to see is, okay, would he want to keep Matthew Stafford? Because Sheila Fordham said it would be up to the next head coach whether or not he would want to keep Matthew Stafford. Now, this is a question that's nearly impossible to answer because, you look at it, okay, yeah, he's a defense coordinator. He's never going to be asked, hey, how do you feel about Stafford? Unless they did an actual interview. So I have no idea what the heck his answer would be here, but personally, this would be my prediction. I think he would keep Matthew Stafford unless they got a really good deal in a trade. Reason being, money. I think that's the biggest reason. We did a Stafford video earlier. I think it'd be money. The reason I say that is because he wouldn't want to eat all that dead money knowing that he wants to make changes on this defense. Now, I don't think he needs to change everything on this team, but I think there's some things that he wants to tweak. And I think because of that, if the Leicester Lions can get a good offer where they can find a good trade in return, and if they can, then I could see him take it. But unless they can get that, which may be very difficult to come by, I could definitely see him saying, okay, hold up. I'm a first-time head coach. There's really two ways to go about it. Okay, you could take the Matt Patricia road. Matt Patricia came in. He said, okay, so I'm a first-time head coach. I got Matthew Stafford here. That's actually a big benefit because I know I have a quarterback. I know how difficult it is to find a QB, but I know I have one, so that's great. I can build with that. Or you can take the route, which obviously Robert might take that route. Or you could take the route as, okay, I'm a first-time head coach. I'm going to actually blow it up. I'm going to go get my own guy, and that could buy me some time as to, okay, I don't have a quarterback yet. He's still a rookie. He's still learning. If we come out to a slow start, that's why. But that would ultimately, again, kind of come down to who's that offense coordinator did you hire, right? Did you hire an offense coordinator that wants to keep the quarterback? That's the biggest question, and we don't really know that. We can't really figure that answer out. There's really no way for me to figure out that answer. I mean, unless you guys have any suggestions, I don't know how I would figure that out, but those are important questions. So I could definitely see him sticking with it, kind of the Patricia road of, okay, it's my first time. If anything, I don't know a lot about the offense, but I do know that we have a quarterback. And I know that if I get an offense coordinator that can work with that, that's great. Kind of like Lions did, they brought in Bevel, he worked with it. Great. Since Robert Saleh doesn't know the offense side of things, he may say, okay, well, at least we have a quarterback. I'll hire an offense coordinator. You take care of that. You got a quarterback to mess around with. That's great. That way you don't have to worry about finding one at least right away. And I'll focus on the defense. It'll be very similar to Patricia in that way if Robert Saleh was hired. Now, hopefully we get different results than what we got with Matt Patricia clearly. And, that's got to happen because otherwise he'll end up like Matt Patricia and he'll also get fired. So those are the two questions that, I think you really would have to ask, but they're very difficult. What GM would bring him in? I mean, we've only looked at two of them. So I don't want to start naming off GMs because I have only looked at two of them. So as we continue to learn, we'll continue to figure out what GMs might bring him in. But I think Spielman was the guy that we talked about that potentially could bring in Robert Saleh as they try to maybe form their own thing here. This is another thing that I want to bring up. How would he build this team? Okay. Now, again, the offense side of things, I don't know. I don't know how he would go about building it, but I do know the defense side of things, how they build things and where he's been successful in San Francisco, because it's going to be about building a defense that, is successful. You're a defense-minded coach. Your defense is supposed to really improve. The problem with Patricia is our offense actually improved, but our defense didn't. And that's not right? You're a defense-minded coach. Your defense didn't improve very much at all. I mean, just very little, if at all. That's a problem. So when you hire the defense guy, it's supposed to be our defense takes a jump. Our offense, we're kind of just, hoping that the offense coordinator can do what he can do, but it's supposed to be the defense takes a jump. Fortunately, that wasn't the case with Patricia. So the hope is that would happen with Robert Saleh. Well, when did his defense have success? This is where I go back to the money side of things. And maybe if you can find a trade so we can get him extra picks so we can keep bringing in the guys that he wants to, maybe. But here's how he built his defense. He built it through the front seven. He's a former linebacker coach. He loves his linebackers, right? He loves the linebackers, but he loves that front seven. His scheme is not super crazy. It's a little bit similar and also a little bit different from what Patricia was running, but it's like this as in, I want to bring four. We're going to play a base 4-3 defense. We're also going to play cover 3 a majority of the time defensively, and that defensive line has to dominate. I don't want to blitz. I want to be a team that doesn't blitz a lot but gets a lot of pressure with that front four. So they've stacked crazy talent really in the entire front seven. I mean, they just went out and got insane talent. And after that 2018 season, heading into 19 and 20, that front seven was so good. I mean, you're seeing right now what it looks like defensively. And this year, they're not even completely healthy. But last year, we saw what it could do, and we'll talk about the stats in a minute. Front seven consisted of, going out signing Quan Alexander, and Nick Bosa. You had Armstead, you have Buckner, you have Solomon Thomas. You go out and you get D Ford. I mean, they made some major moves, and they just said, hey, we're making this front seven right. And they did that, and the defense took a huge jump, and they're one of the best in the league. So that's clearly how I think he would want to build the defense here. And the linebackers in front seven would be a big approach there. Now, I don't think that he would have to completely redo this whole defense because I do think we have some talent and young up-and-coming talent, but he would definitely want to add to it. You have John Pennicini. You have Danny Shelton for another year. You have Nick Williams. You have Deshaun Hand. You're probably going to move some of these players, right? But then you have Jayshon Cornell, who you'll get to see for the first time next season. We'll see how he feels about him. You do have Trey Flowers still locked up if he wants to keep that contract. You will still have Trey Flowers. Fortunately, you won't have Everson Griffin, but you still will have Julian Okoro returning off an injury. You will have Austin Bryant returning off of an injury. And your linebacker group, that's kind of the biggest up in the air for me. How does he feel, about Jelani Tavai? Jared Davis will likely be gone. How does he feel about Jelani Tavai, right? Jamie Collins. I think you'd keep Jamie Collins, but I think you'd see definitely a new look in the linebacker group, right? They probably spend big money there, make some changes there. But I think in the front seven, it's not terrible, but they would definitely bring in some rushers. I think it'd be about bringing in speed rushers. It'd be about pass rushers in the front four, and in the linebacker group bringing in some more talent. And again, that takes you right back to the whole thing with Chris Spielman is that I think Chris Spielman would draft a top linebacker. So if you were mashed up together, that'd probably be one of your looks is that we'd go get the guy out of Penn State or some top linebacker in the draft, or we'd sign one to pair along with Jamie Collins. I think that would be his focus as soon as he came in, because his focus isn't as much on the cornerback group as it was for Patricia. It's more on that front seven. I think the linebackers, you'd see some big names come in, and the defensive line, you may see some tweaks as in we're trying to get pass rushers. Okay, we're trying to get Everson Griffin. Maybe Everson Griffin, they bring him back. Maybe they try to bring Everson Griffin back. That's what I think you'll see. Now, the thing is that takes time. You can't do it all in one offseason. Robert Saleh may look at it like this. It's going to take some time for us to build this front seven and defense exactly how I want it to be, right? So here's what we're going to do. We'll try to find a trade partner for Matthew Stafford. Okay, I could definitely see it. Now, he may keep Stafford for the offense, but here's the other scenario. If he wants to trade away Stafford, here's the other side of things. I'll trade away Matthew Stafford for whatever I can get, then you have that quarterback that could potentially, that rookie quarterback that could take some pressure off of you instantly, and then you continue to try to build that defense, and it takes a couple of years. Or the other route where you keep Stafford, now you just try to build the defense, and you win with Matthew Stafford's quarterback. I think you could definitely win with Matthew Stafford as your quarterback. So there's really two ways that he can go about it, and either way, it's probably going to take a little bit of time, but maybe they just need a new voice, because I don't think this defense is completely awful in the front seven. They do need some tweaks to the way what I've seen how he does defense. You're definitely going to need to get pass rushers. I don't think the front four is awful. I mean, you're going to have Romeo Cora for one more season. You'll have to play him when he's gone, but he's coming out as a really good pass rusher. You're going to get Trey Flowers back. I think it's about getting another linebacker to pair with Collins, and it's also going to be about getting some defensive tackles potentially that can get more pressure than what you have, because you have those guys that can stop the run like Penasini, those guys at Cornell, but what you really, I think what he's going to look to do is try to get a really big name DT and probably some linebackers. I think that front seven is clearly going to be the focus if he comes in, and I think they may be okay with the secondary. I don't think we have a bad unit defensively. I just think that we need a lot of things that need time to grow. I think Okudah needs time to develop. I think you have some pieces here that are set in place. Maybe you just need to put them in the right spots. Maybe they just need a different situation to be in. Maybe they need a different voice, something. I don't know. I don't think it's completely awful, but I think we need time to grow. Unfortunately, you'll lose out on Everson Griffin, but I think the front four at 7 you'll see is going to be definitely the focus if he came in and became our head coach. Let's finish this thing up with my pros and cons and also take a look at the stats a little bit here. So let's dive right into the pros and cons. As you guys can see on the screen, you should be able to. Starting off with the pros, the first one, he is from Michigan. I think that is big. I think the fact that he's from Michigan, a lot of people believe that he's going to bring that with him, that he knows the heartache and the pain that, us Lions fans have gone through. So he would be a guy that'd be a perfect fit because, again, like we said with Chris Spielman, he wouldn't be able to sleep if this team was not successful. He would do everything he can to make this team work. Again, I think I think every coach, tries to do that, to be honest. But him being from Michigan, could definitely help. It wouldn't be like a new place for him. He'd be like, okay, this is home. Like, this is home for me in Detroit, which is just kind of cool to think about. The next pro is this: he will adjust. And then it says advice, defensive line coach. What does that mean? Well, I mean, he will adjust. Like we talked about earlier, he's a guy that doesn't really have that strategy of I want to blitz a lot, but he will adjust. So, for example, this season, with a lot of the injuries they're dealing with when it comes to pass rushers, he's changed his defense up where they are blitzing way more than they have before. They're blitzing much more than they have before. It's not like he was completely stubborn, like, hey, I don't want to blitz. That's not how I do things. He changed it up. For the example, this season, he's blitzing 33% of the time versus the last 2 seasons, just over 20%. I mean, that's a huge increase in blitzing. And the reason being is because of a lot of those injuries on the front seven. And even this year, they're getting less pressure than the last 2 seasons while blitzing a lot more. Blitzing doesn't equal pressure. But the reason they're having to do it is because they don't have the pass rusher. So he's adjusted. Now, what do I mean about the defensive line coach? Well, he was suggested that they would hire a defensive line coach to help out the defense. And it really helped with the scheme that they had going because his defense that he wanted to play was a little bit different from what the defensive line coach suggested, which I guess was a wide 9 defense. And it basically put less pressure on the safety unit and more pressure on the linebackers. So you can see when they went out and got guys like Quan Alexander, they had some really good front seven. It helped their defense a lot because before then, it was pretty reliant on safeties and they didn't have a lot of talent at the safety group. So the question is, when he comes to Detroit, will he take that with him and say, okay, here's where we are. What kind of defense do we need to play? Can I adjust with that? Because it was that idea that was brought up, hey, you should go hire, that we should bring this guy in, and then the defensive line coach had the idea to move it to this type of defense, stick with your 4-3 but go a wide 9 type of look, and he was like, you know what, let's do it. So he was willing to adjust. The question is, will he know how to adjust when it comes to Detroit without having that brought up to him? But, you would hope that that's the case, that he would have learned from that. Next up, injuries. Now, injuries aren't a good thing, but I bring it up as to where the defense has stayed relatively pretty darn good with injuries, and that's mainly this season. A lot of injuries this team has dealt with on both sides of the ball, and you can see statistically, the stats, they're really good, and we'll dive into those, so we'll take a look at them once we get over there, but their defense has been good, at least for the most part this season with all the injuries. Next up, player support. Richard Sherman's the best example here. Sherman gave a lot of support, saying that he needs to get a head coaching job. It should be in the Lions. I guess he was saying things like that. He's the favorite. It's always nice to see player support. I mean, you see it a lot, but obviously when you're on a team, you're not going to bash on your coach, but it is kind of cool to see it, a little bit of a change there. But there is player support, so you can't deny the fact that players are behind him. What is the motive for the player saying it? Some people think that it's coincidental, but either way, it's player support, and you'll take it. Fan favorite. This one's kind of weird, but I put it in here because I think he is somewhat of a fan favorite. I think a lot of guys want to see him be that coach. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have said that this is who they want as the next head coach to me. And I think that's big for him because that would mean when he comes in, he would have that right behind him. We're not hiring a coach that is kind of split where some people are like, I don't like him, I do like him. I would say about 70% 75% at least of the Lions fan base is really good with bringing in Robert Saleh. You know, they would be really happy bringing him in. Not everybody, but there is a pretty good amount. So I'd say the majority of people, at least that's my opinion. You guys can let me know in the comments. I might be wrong. I think the majority of people believe that, you know, he'd be a good fit for us. And finally, top defense with pieces. When he's had the pieces, this defense in the last 2 seasons has been great. The question is, can he get those pieces in as a head coach? You know, will he be able to work with the GM to find those pieces and make it happen? Because before that, the defense wasn't bad. It took over a terrible defense, but it was average to below average for a couple of years. However, once they got their pieces in the building and they were healthy, I should say, and even this they're doing well, even while being healthy. So you see, once they get the right pieces, it seems as if he can make the defense thrive. Now, again, that's as a coordinator. So that takes me to my next point, as he's never been a head coach. This is one of the biggest concerns. It doesn't mean you're going to be bad, because that's where a lot of guys start, but it is a concern because Lions historically, their most success have come from guys either in the organization, their most successful coaches, either in the organization or they've been a head coach before. The Lions, to me, need someone seasoned. But if you are going to go get a coordinator, which is likely because that's where most of the candidates are, if you are going to get it, there's a little bit of a risk there that he's never done before. So it's a learning curve. So can he hire the right guys? Can he hire the right coordinator? Can he find the right people? Can he speak to the room? Can he understand and control a full locker room instead of just worrying about his scheme, right? Can he be prepared for every game instead of being prepared for what just my defense has to do? Because I feel like that was an issue with Patricia. I feel like we've had that issue before with guys never done it. I think that was helped out Jim Caldwell. He stepped into a team that was built relatively well. The problem with Jim Caldwell, and a good thing with Jim Caldwell, is he's coached before. Wasn't a great stint, but he coached before. So when he stepped in, it wasn't new to him. It was like, okay, here's my guys. We didn't really build anything there, but he was able to step in and have success day one. That's the thing with never being a head coach. You never know if they're going to step in and have that success. He may step in and it may take him time to learn, and we could be in the same boat. Or he could come in and it could click right away. You just don't have any past experience to say, okay, yeah, at least he knows what he's doing when he steps in. That's something that's just a complete guess for us right now. And we've seen that the Lions have been that team that's been really willing to bring in coordinators. And what did they say? Like none over 36% winning percentage? Like that's, you know, that's not good. So continuing down, defensive minded. This isn't a bad thing per se. Okay, defense minded isn't bad. The reason I bring this up isn't necessarily a concern for him. It's just a concern in general because it seems like the NFL is going way more offensive minded guys as a head coach. Okay, you're a coordinator, cool, but you're offensive minded. You'll call the plays for us. We're seeing that a lot of places. And again, a perfect example is the Browns with Kevin Stefanski, who passed on Saleh, who played a great game against the Vikings, by the way, when he was in Minnesota. But all of a sudden they go with the guy from Minnesota. It's working out really well. So not necessarily mean it's going to be a bad thing. I'm just going by basically what we've seen around the league. Average before great talent. Yeah, the defense was below average to average, but he was taking over a trash defense. So I can't say that, okay, yeah, this is all his fault. The defense was not good when he stepped in there with the San Francisco 49ers. So they did still improve, but once they got the talent, they were great. Reliant on offense coordinator. This is just kind of what happens when you're a defensive-minded guy. He'll probably be very reliant on offense coordinator because he doesn't know or have experience with the other side of the ball. So super reliant on what the offense coordinator can do. If it comes out and it's a success, boom, your team may be really well. I think the Lions, we'll see what they did with Darrell Bevell, but I think, you know, they didn't get a terrible guy in Bevell. We'll see how much different it looks, but it did improve their offense. I mean, statistically, it improved their offense with Bevell. So the question is, can he hit on someone like that? Can he hire the right guy, right? Because I know people get mad, well, Patricia just hired his friends. That's probably what, you know, everybody's going to do. They're going to hire guys they know because they're comfortable. He's never done it before. And finally, he was passed on a head coach job. That goes to the Browns thing. So there's really no other huge concerns here. The biggest one is just simply he's never been a head coach. That's going to be my biggest concern for everybody. But there's going to be a lot of guys that we look at with that concern. So if you can look past that and you're willing to take the risk, which I would be very happy if the Lions would take a guy that's had that before. If you're going to take a risk, this guy does have very, very, very promising attributes. The one concern is that, okay, he's a defensive guy, and it seems like teams are going away from that and are having success going away from it, but he definitely is a very smart defensive coach. My question is, can he run a team? I know he can coach, but can he run a team? On to the stats really quickly. We're going to look at those. In 2016, you'll see that's what they were before. You can see improvements pretty much across the board. The one thing you're going to notice, 2018, the turnovers. They didn't force a lot of turnovers, and that was because they didn't have that defense. It was a pretty rough year for the defense. 105.4 pass rating, over 4 yards an attempt, only 7 turnovers, which was by far the worst in the league. It struggled, but once they made that adjustment, the offseason, they said, look, we're going to go get you the talent, and you got to make it happen. He made it happen. 2019, one of the best defense. I think they might have been the best defense league, 27 turnovers. They did allow 4.5 yards carry, but only an 83 pass rating, 33% on third downs, 19.4 points per game. In 2019, that's incredibly good. And then in 2020, a great defense with injury. So last 2 years have been good. Actually, at one point, it's crazy to see, someone made an article saying from the San Francisco Nation that he should have been fired. I thought that was kind of blasphemous. You know, people just want to fire people all the time when 2 games go wrong. But Yeah, I think if he can get the right pieces in here, I think we'll see success defensively. It's a matter of how long will that take? Will he be able to coach a team? You know, I know he's smart. I know he's a smart guy, okay? Look, he got his degree in finance. He knows about the money side. I know this is a smart guy. I know he can game plan. But does that mean you can be a head coach? That's the biggest thing right now. He hasn't got that job yet. He hasn't got the opportunity yet. Will be with the Detroit. He's a favorite, so we'll see. Let me know what you guys think. Give him a grade 1 out of 10. Some people are going to like him, some people aren't. That's what I got. That's what I know about him. What do you guys think? Thank you for watching, and I'm out. Are you kidding me right now? I had to put my helmet on for this one. Are you kidding? Look at this. Look at all these members. What? Yo, hey. Shout out to all the members, man. Look how many All-Pro members there are. Like, literally, it's the whole screen, dog. This is crazy. The patrons, of course, the Hall of Fame members, man. Y'all got the gold color. It's kind of yellow, but it's supposed to be gold. Shout out to all the members, man. If you want to be a part of this, all you got to do is join the channel. But there are perks that come with it. Stay locked in the community tab if you are a member, because that's where a lot of information comes out. I appreciate all of you. What?